I recently flew from Yorkshire to Guardamar in southern Spain and thought I'd document the experience. If you're new around here, my name is Pippa. I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user with a chronic illness, and it's really important to say that I don't represent every disabled person's experiences because we all have our unique access needs, but I really hope you enjoy the video. In a couple of days, I'm going to be flying from Leeds Bradford Airport to Alicante in Spain. And this will be the first time that I've flown solo using my own transit wheelchair. So if you don't know, a transit wheelchair is a manual chair, but it's not one that you can self-propel. It has to be pushed by somebody else. I got that wheelchair from the NHS about 9 or 10 years ago now, because self-propelling isn't a realistic option for me. When I'm here in the UK, I'm usually using a Powerchair with a joystick. But because I'm flying solo and I haven't got somebody with me to push the transit chair, I was kind of like, well, how does all of this work? What do I do with the assistance? Anyway, it's all taken care of as far as I'm aware. I rung Jet2 before I made the booking. I've got a clip from that, I think. Please excuse my appearance. I had quite a rough night with insomnia last night, but I'm filming this now while I remember. I've just spoken to Jet2 on the phone while I was making my airport booking, and I asked the question about how it works if I've got a transit wheelchair that I can't self-propel, and they basically said that it's the airport's responsibility rather than Jet2, which is the airline I'm flying with. But you can turn up in your own wheelchair and they will organise it all when you check in on the day, so that's your opportunity to say exactly what you need. But there will be somebody who can push me through in my own wheelchair. And then I asked what the deal was when you got through security and you got to the other side, because the time that I'm flying at is quite early and I'm going to need something to eat probably. And she said normally the protocol is to take you straight to the gate, but if there are things you need, they can arrange with you to like leave you somewhere. And then apparently there are help points all around the airport, and when you're ready to move on and go to the gate, for example, if you've just like sat down and had a coffee or had breakfast, you'll go to the help point and call for somebody to take you where you need to go next. So in theory it should all work and it should all be sorted, but I thought I'll vlog the journey, as much of it as I can, because I think it'll be a bit awkward vlogging when there's somebody I don't know pushing me, so we'll see how that works out. But yeah, just for anybody else who happens to find themselves in this situation where they're flying solo while using a transit wheelchair, I would have found it helpful to hear somebody else's experience, so hopefully that will be this. But once I get to Alicante, I'm going on to Guardamar. My mum is actually there at the minute and I'm just going out to spend the week with her. She's got a little Airbnb and she's got an extra bed, so I was like, yeah, you know what, why not? And the dog is there as well. So my mum actually drove to Spain from Sheffield, like she went via France, and I think that's so impressive. I don't think Guardamar is a massive touristy city at the moment. I think it's more of a residential place. So yeah, I'm not going to be doing loads, but I'll just vlog a few little bits here and there. But if it's of interest, I do have other travel vlogs on this YouTube channel. And from Spain, I've got one from Malaga last year and one from Barcelona the year before. Barcelona in particular, I had an amazing access experience. I can't even lie about it. I do have a fear of flying with my Powerchair. I know I need to get over it at some point, and I will do it at some point, but I'm just not there yet. I just can't bear the idea of anything happening to my Powerchair. So I was just going to take the transit chair and just have that be my chair for the week. If you're new to my channel, I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user. I have a chronic illness, so I can stand and walk for limited periods of time, but for longer periods of time it makes me very unwell. And I was just going to stick with the transit, but I have made the decision to rent a Powerchair while I'm out there as well, which is also something that I've done twice before in Spain and had a generally really positive experience with, so I've got a Powerchair waiting for me out there. Anyway, I think that's all you need to know. I'm glad I've sat down and done this now so I don't have to do it at 4 AM in the morning on Thursday, and whatever this vlog turns out to be, I hope you enjoy it. So it was a very early start for me on Thursday morning, but I got to the airport and I headed to the assistance check-in point, which is right near the entrance. I checked in there, and then once the check-in desk opened, one of the airport staff took me over there in my own wheelchair. I hadn't booked any hold luggage for this flight because I was trying to save some money, but in the end they put my cabin bag in the hold luggage, which was really handy because it meant I didn't have to try and pull it while I was waiting to board. And then after that we headed straight through security and we came out the other side with loads of time to spare. So normally you would just wait around the assistance point until it was time to board your flight, but because I'd left so much extra time, they asked me what I wanted to do, and I said I'd like to go and get some breakfast in one of the cafes or restaurants. And the assistance person I had at this point was really lovely, and she actually took me all the way over there, which was amazing. And I just sat down and enjoyed some breakfast, and then I headed back to the assistance point and waited until it was time to board my flight. There were loads of people who needed assistance on my particular flight, and I could tell that the staff were a little bit stressed about it, but everyone was really friendly as always. And even though I'd said I didn't need to use the ambulift, because there were so many other people using it, they just took me on that anyway. So boarded the plane, they did the nut allergy announcement, all good to go. And it was a busy flight, but I had loads of leg room on this Jet2 flight, so that was really lovely as well. From there, I just relaxed and I tried to get some rest, and I enjoyed the journey. We actually flew over the Pyrenees Mountains, which was amazing. And then we landed in Spain, and as usual, all the other passengers disembark first. And if you have assistance, you wait until last off. This is usually where the most frustrating bit happens, because there is a massive delay and it feels like ages before you can get off the plane. And by the time we did get off, all the other passengers had collected their luggage and left the airport already, which tells you how long it was. But all in all, it felt like a really successful journey. It was no problem at all to do it with my own transit wheelchair. And from there, I was free to enjoy the rest of my holiday. Oh, you're falling asleep, aren't you? Oh, your eyes shutting. Reunited with my little best bud. Excuse the mess, I've already started chucking my stuff everywhere and unpacking, but I've got my lovely little room. I just can't. You are the most beautiful girl in all the world. Do you know that? I've been a bit wiped out, so this is how the holiday has begun. I've got a line on my forehead from my eye mask, so ignore that. But I've had a bit of rest now. Not on top form, but let's see what the day holds from here. My wheelchair has arrived as well, so I'll show you that. This is the Powerchair that I've rented for the week. I used the same company that I used in Malaga last year, and I believe they're called Motion for Rent. I think they cover most areas, and I've had nothing but a positive experience with them. Some of the Powerchair companies, any of the wheelchair rental companies, you have to be really careful and check the TripAdvisor reviews, the Trustpilot reviews, because some of them are a little bit scammy, aren't they? But yeah, so this is the one I've got. The brand is called Libacar, and this was the lightest one on their website. So she's just about to have her inaugural outing. We're going to go and have a wander down to the marina, and yeah, very happy that it's here. Ruben, do you want to go for a walk? Shall we go for a walk? Come on then, let's go for a walk. Security cameras when you've got a little dog like this. Constantly nebbing at everyone, aren't you? We just had a little stroll around the marina, and then we just went and had a drink, and I'm flagging now, so I'm gonna go back. Really pleased actually that I managed to get out at all, because when I woke up this morning I thought there is absolutely no way. So glad I've had some fresh air, and now I'm heading back to go back to bed and rest again. What's happening, Ruby? What have we seen? Always nebbing at everything. Well, that escalated a little bit. We were just having a nice little wander around. It's a massive market, bigger than I thought, and then it got busier, more and more people turned up, and I just got really like, I don't love being around big crowds of people these days. It's a bit hard. It was quite hard to get around in the wheelchair as it got fuller, and then there was like, I could hear people coughing, and I think this is the first time that I've come out not bringing a mask as a precaution. So I just didn't feel very good about it, so I've just kind of got myself out. My rented wheelchair in the back of this car also chose the worst possible moment to skid down the pavement, so I'm not the biggest fan of this chair, I have to say. It's great if you want something lightweight, but it's not the easiest to drive and it doesn't feel as safe as I would like it to. Yeah, nice to go to the market this morning, nice to see it, and did you enjoy it? Every clip in this vlog is just going to be the dog. Just assume the dog is attached to my person at all times. Did you enjoy it? Yeah. The only thing I bought from the market today was this, and it's a type of fruit and we didn't know what it was, so we bought it, and from my research I think it's something called a chirimoya. I've just done some thorough googling to check that I'm not likely to be allergic to it and I think I've got the green light. I think we're all good to go, so we're just gonna slice it and see what happens. It does look a little bit like something you'd find on I'm a Celebrity, but I've just had the first report in that it's very, very nice. I don't know that I'd get it again.
No.
Well, it's good that we tried it. It's good that we tried something new. But I think that'll do me. Just googled the health benefits and the main one it came up with is it helps lower blood pressure, which is great for lots of people. Not so great if you have low blood pressure to start with, so it probably wasn't the smartest choice I've ever made, but I didn't know then. I do know now. Good morning, another bed update, but today we are going to go to Reina Sofia Park. It was the one thing that I really wanted to do when I was looking at what sort of things are around here. So the weather's not perfect, it's a little bit chilly, but that's okay. The park where we're going to looks really beautiful. Apparently there's lots of wildlife there, but you can still take dogs as long as they're well behaved, Ruby. And yeah, hopefully it should be really good. Reina Sofia Park is a little green haven in the middle of Guardamar town centre and somewhere I really wanted to visit during my recent trip to Spain. The first challenge was getting into the space since there are very few ramps and dropped curbs around the area, but once inside there are paths and walkways all the way through. Well-behaved dogs on leads are welcome, and naturally because I was in a wheelchair Ruby wouldn't walk anywhere anyway, but we enjoyed strolling past the woodlands and the lakes. We didn't spot any red squirrels this time, but we did see loads of wild peacocks and witnessed them climbing trees, which was quite terrifying, and the surroundings got more and more beautiful the further you got in. It wasn't the best access experience I've ever had, especially as the pavement was quite a bumpy ride, but it was perfectly doable and a nice way to start the day. Did you have a good time at the beach yesterday? You liked the beach, didn't you? You loved running around on the sand. You were very happy. Are you sleepy again? Oh, always sleepy. She's such a good girl. Today we're off to try and find a pink lake that is very famous, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of where we're going, but in Spain the water appears pink in a few different lakes, and sometimes you can see flamingos there as well, so fingers crossed for that. Look at my face. It's not for you. I was going to tell you about my Powerchair related disaster I've had today while it's just me, but I think I'll wait until we get home. So we were out shopping, having a lovely time, and then we went in Tiger. I was in my wheelchair looking at something on the shelves, and a woman went past and her handbag got caught on the joystick of the wheelchair, so I ended up going with her, which is not ideal to start with, but we were laughing about that. And then I went to move again when I was done, and the wheelchair had completely like short-circuited. It wouldn't turn on, it wouldn't do anything, and we were like, brilliant. But it's all right because it does have manual mode, and that's been really helpful having that on this wheelchair. So my mum wheeled me out, which I'm glad it was an option, but that's not ideal for either of us. And we went to the information point. Well, first of all, I had a good look at it to see if I could figure it out myself. And I thought, I've got the charger with me, so I'll try and find a plug point and we'll plug it in there. And eventually we did manage. Someone's looking at me, never mind, hang on. I am just talking to the camera. The dog here is staring out the person next to me, and it's just gone past the point of awkward, so I might as well just carry on now. We went to the information point and they weren't as helpful as they could have been, but that's fine. And we were just like thinking what to do, and I saw a plug point on the floor in one of the shops that was nearby, so I went in and I asked very nicely if they would mind if I tried plugging my wheelchair in. The staff member was so lovely, and she was like, yeah, sure, do what you need to do. So plugged it in for a few minutes, and thankfully it came back on again. If that hadn't have worked, I don't know what we would have done. Okay, we weren't quite sure what we were going to do today, and we didn't think the weather was going to be this nice, but we just got in the car and started driving, and we've come to a little place called Santa Pola, and we had no idea what we would find here. Ruby's having a good explore already, but it looks really nice. It's like a harbourside coastal area, and we're just going to have a walk around and see what the day holds. Oh, lovely.
You can go in it.
You can't. Oh, Ruby, look at, she looks mortified. I feel like a lot of my vlogging has been done in the car this week, but this is just like, it just works out that this is the best time to talk to you. We've had such a nice day in Santa Pola. Yeah, Santa Pola. Really easy to get around as a wheelchair user. So we just had a little walk along the harbour side. It was one of those places where they say there's like an accessible beach, but something I've noticed even in my limited travels around Spain is that the definition of accessible beach varies quite a lot. So on this one it was just wooden. Oh, Jesus, Ruby. And don't get me wrong, that's still really lovely because it means you can get closer to the sea, and if you're ambulant like me, you could in theory leave the chair there and get onto the sand, but it doesn't compare to experiences I've had in other places in Spain with accessible beaches. So if you are looking to take a holiday in Spain and you really want to spend good time on the beach, I highly recommend Barcelona. I'm not going to say the name right. I believe it was spelt like Nova Icaria Beach. I've got a vlog on this YouTube channel from that trip. That was an incredible experience. But yeah, we're just chilling in a nice cool car while my mum runs into Lidl, and today's my last day, so I'm going to be flying home tomorrow morning. The last 2 days in particular have been so lovely. The weather's been great and just been having a really nice time. Flying back from Alicante Airport with a transit wheelchair was definitely harder than flying out. There are assistance check-in points throughout the airport that you can buzz and someone will come and meet you, but I knew the assistance desk wasn't too far away, so I decided to walk myself over. That was my first error because when I got there was a massive queue and I'd already been stood up too long, so I was worrying about that. But the people at Jet2 were nearby and they just intervened and they got hold of anybody who was travelling with Jet2 and they took us over to check in with them directly instead, so at least that saved some of the standing up time. I'm really glad that I left extra time because there was a long wait to get through security, and then once my bags had been scanned and I'd gone through like the detector, it seemed like people just forgot I was there, like nobody claimed me on the other side, so I was just there for ages trying to get hold of somebody, but eventually they took me through to the terminal. There I was taken to a sort of holding area for passengers requiring assistance before it was time to go to the boarding gate. Again, I decided to walk myself to a toilet and to get a drink. I didn't really feel like I could ask somebody this time, but that's okay. It was possible to do it, so I did it. We carried on waiting at the access area, and the closer it got to the time of my flight's departure, the more worried I was getting. But I was sat with other people on the same flight, and they had been sat in that holding area for 3 hours. And the people who were doing the assistance on this day did tell us that this was like a crazy amount of people needing assistance on this flight, which could partially explain the delays I experienced. I think they said there was 21 wheelchair users on our flight, which is just wild. The delays continued once we had landed on the other side, again because there were so many people to get off the plane. It took an hour from the plane landing to get into baggage reclaim just because of the wheelchairs and the assistance, which I appreciate can't be helped, and the staff were having a really busy day clearly, but it's still frustrating, especially because I wasn't feeling very well by this point. Like another passenger actually like turned to me in concern and they were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine, look, I'll deal with it." And I did deal with it all the way until I got home, when I was very, very close to passing out. I'm sat here laughing to myself because on the flight home, I was like, I am invincible. This has opened so many doors for me. This is incredible. And then by getting home and nearly fainting, it's safe to say that I was humbled. And just to keep it real, almost passed out in the taxi on the way back. So I'm desperate for the loo, but I've just got into my flat and I just made it to the sofa. So I've got my legs elevated. And I just need to stay here until my ears stop ringing and I start feeling a bit better. Just to round off this video, I thought I would share some tips, tricks, experiences for anybody watching this who might be planning a similar trip. In terms of flying with a transit wheelchair, I think my experience going out was very good and my experience coming back was maybe less good. It definitely wasn't as impossible as it seemed when I was first booking this trip, and I think so much of it depends on the airport staff on the ground and how they are and their approach to things. If you are travelling solo, I think my best advice is to leave extra time if you're doing it in a transit or even a manual wheelchair, I suppose. I think if you've not got somebody with you, it can be more difficult to make your presence known if something isn't going right. That's definitely something that I found this time. So leave yourself as much time as you can, which I know is quite a frustrating piece of advice when you're also managing a chronic illness and you need to ensure that you're resting and pacing. But yeah, it did get a bit dicey on the way back, and it got to a point where it was 20 minutes before the flight was set to depart and all of the wheelchair users were still on the ground. But the one thing I can say is that both on the way there and on the way back, Jet2 were outstanding. This is the third really positive experience I've had with them in recent years, and if Jet2 is an option when I'm looking to go somewhere, I would actively choose flights that were with them. I've also recently found out that sometimes these videos have a funny way of making their way back to people, so if anybody relevant is watching this, I just wanted to say a particular thank you to Miguel on the ground in Alicante. Works for Jet2, so friendly, so welcoming, couldn't do enough to help you, but all of the staff were outstanding in my opinion. So in terms of whether I would do it again, travelling solo with a transit wheelchair, it's tricky because now I know that I can do it if I need to, but I think if the airports were any bigger than the ones I flew from this time, Leeds Bradford Airport is comparatively quite a small airport, but I would feel a lot more secure and independent if I did do it in my power chair. And I like, the more of this sort of thing I do, the closer I'm getting to thinking I'm just gonna have to do it. I am just gonna have to travel with my power chair at some point. And yet, even while I was there this time, I was watching the way that the ground staff in Alicante were like handling even my transit wheelchair and another passenger's mobility scooter, and the way they were just kind of like bashing them about. It's just, I hate that that's something that you even have to take into consideration when you're planning like your adventures, because it shouldn't be an issue and yet it still is. So I definitely still have the fear around that. But if you are flying with a transit wheelchair, I think my best advice is just to be as prepared as possible, to make sure you have a way of speaking up and finding airport staff if you need to. I appreciate that if you're an ambulant person like me, that's a lot easier than if you use a wheelchair full time. And then I think if you really find yourself in a tricky spot, like there was me and other wheelchair users who were sat at this like assistance point for ages and the flight time was getting closer and closer. If it gets to that point, and if you see people who feel like approachable who are also in that situation, like there's strength in numbers. Like I got chatting a little bit to people near me, and even just the reassurance that they were on the same flight and just having like additional people there, it made you feel less like you'd been forgotten. But overall, if you're watching this video because you're about to do a flight with a transit wheelchair, it is possible, and I really, really, really hope that you have a good experience when you do it. In terms of Guardamar as a destination, I've found the access to be fairly okay in a rented power chair. It's definitely not as accessible as other parts of Spain that are perhaps more touristy or bigger cities, but it was definitely, like, it was fine. Like, one of the great things about Spain is that more often than not, wherever there's a flight of stairs, you will also find a ramp nearby. And there's definitely a lot of thought given to accessibility in comparison to other places. Reina Sofia Park that we went to was good. I wanted to go to the castle in Guardamar, but it was closed for the season when we were there, but apparently access is fairly decent there. We did go out to see the Pink Lake in Torrevieja, and it wasn't very pink, which was a shame, but these things can't be helped. It was really great to have a car because it meant that we could explore the area around Guardamar as well as Guardamar itself. And I think my favourite day of this whole trip was when we went to Santa Pola. I'm sure that even there we only scratched the surface of what's there, especially with it still being the low season, but that was a really great place to go. Very easy to get around as a wheelchair user, loads of dining options. And they do a ferry to a nearby island whose name I have forgotten, but there is a wheelchair accessible ferry that's also dog friendly. So if you're in a similar position to me, there are some really nice excursions you can do as well. 1 week in Guardamar was definitely enough for me. I didn't feel like I needed any longer there, but also bear in mind that it is the low season, and it was still technically winter when I went. I'm sure that as the weather gets hotter and the season picks up, I'm sure there's a lot more going on. And around the area again, there are loads of like attractions and water parks. Like pre-disability, I used to be an absolute sucker for a water park. So I'm sure that if the weather allowed you to get on the beach all the time and go and do stuff like that, it probably would have been a different experience to what I had this time. And my impression was that it was a nice, safe place for solo travellers. So people who, like my mum, have come on a road trip for some winter sunshine. It felt quite safe. It felt like there was a fairly decent sense of community. There were a lot of other British people who had also come over for the season. The rentals and like the accommodation was very cheap there in comparison to other places. So if you are looking for that sort of escape, even if you are a solo traveller, like my mum, like the way she's done it with the dog, it still feels like quite a nice option. There's like good amenities, there's supermarkets, there's places to get your food. My mum said it's been quite easy to get to grips with driving around, even on the other side of the road. And then a few bonus points about access and allergies. I had another really positive experience of renting a Powerchair through Motion for Rent. I did have that like slight catastrophe with the wheelchair, but that was the wheelchair's fault, not the rental place's fault. I was gonna say I don't know that I'd choose that wheelchair again, but really for what I was doing this time, it kind of served the purpose. So it was a lightweight chair that we could get in and out of the car. It did what it needed to, but if I was going on like a city break or something with more excursions planned, I would definitely like go up a level and get a more resilient chair. If you've watched my other travel vlogs, you might know that I have multiple food allergies, some of them severe, some of them just annoying. And I did have a few close calls with peanuts when we were out. So there were a lot of bars and restaurants where you would go for a drink and they would put like a bowl of peanuts on the table, which is a very risky game when I'm present. Because we were staying in an Airbnb this time, we did do a lot of like cooking and meal prep at home. But when we did go out, it was fairly doable to find options that were safe for me. I wouldn't say that there are a great deal of vegan options or that there are automatically going to be vegan options on the menu wherever you choose to go, so it might be worth doing your research in advance, which is something that I didn't do this time. We stuck to some big chains, but even like at the local smaller places that we ate, they were fairly understanding about making adaptations to stuff on the menu if it was because of a food allergy. And as always, I took my little allergy translation cards. I'm sure you all know about them already if you've watched my videos, but I will leave a link below to those as always, because they are the only ones that you can get for free, I believe now. A lot of other places charge for them now, but this website still exists, so I will leave them linked below. So overall, I really enjoyed my week in Guardamar. I'm really glad I went. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's my favourite place I've ever been. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's the most accessible place I've ever been. But I am glad that I went, and obviously the main priority for this trip was spending quality time with my mum and Ruby, who by the way is also loving it. It's a very dog friendly place, all things considered, and it seems like everybody walking around has their own little dog with them. But if you're watching this because you're considering taking a trip to Guardamar or Torrevieja or any of the areas around there, I do think you will have a good experience, and I think you will find it doable and enjoyable even if you're using mobility aids. Like, I feel completely confident that it will be doable for you and you'll be able to have a great time there. All of my travel vlogs are followed by a period of rest and recovery, such as life with chronic illness, but I do have a couple of other bits and bobs planned this year. And in May, I still can't believe I'm saying this, but in May I'm doing a trip off my bucket list. I don't have a massive travel bucket list, but this trip is on there and I honestly can't wait. On that note, I am probably going to go back to bed now, but I just wanted to say thank you so much as always for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I really do appreciate you being here and watching these little adventures. You can subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time.